right, perfect. Well, I'm a man of my word, so we'll start here at 2:02. But thank you everyone for joining. This is the third of our fourth or fifth webinar of the year. That's all around the connected product journey. So today is going to be focused on innovation as the secret sauce and how what key ingredients we need to go into IoT success. So wanted to getting started. All right, as far as just a little housekeeping and agenda, we'll do quick welcome and intros, which we're already full into swing. I get to introduce both of our panelists today. We're going to cover a little. Let Alan Kleinerman from Kraft Heinz cover the innovation transformation. Richard's going to kick it off a little bit of Kraft's partner ecosystem and what it's been like to sit within that part of the organization. And then Alan, would love to have you kind of cover more of the Remix innovation strategy and how that's really come together. Most important part of today's webinar is a Q&A time. One of the things that's really key is, and this is not going to be a slide heavy presentation. We really want to facilitate a great conversation with two thought leaders in the space. So just a friendly reminder that if you're new to Zoom, you're able to submit Q&A that we'll be able to monitor. The team will monitor throughout the webinar, and at the end, I'll do a good job of kind of dishing those through. So looking forward to it, and here we go. So as far as meet the panelists, so I have the privilege of introducing both Richard and Alan. So just a quick bio on Alan. Alan started his career with Morgan Stanley, but decided to turn his passion towards the CPG space, spending some time with Reckitt and Mars Wrigley. Most of his roles have been centered around business growth, brand relaunches, and honestly, a steady focus on innovation. Alan currently holds the role of Vice President and Global Head of Innovations at Kraft Heinz. He's not only championed Kraft Heinz's push towards agile innovation, but also built the partner ecosystems to support it. He's a father of three, a sneakerhead, and I think on today's call enjoys and always a Chris Diet Coke. So Alan, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Dan. Excited to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. Next, I have the privilege of introducing Richard Baxter. Richard is the co-founder and CEO here at Mesh Systems. He's been in this business for a number of years, upwards in the 40-year range, but mainly focused on cutting-edge technology, IoT, and all things innovation and connected products. Richard's a proud Boilermaker, as well as a holder of, I think at least for right now, 11 US patents. So not only is he passionate about innovation, but he's also passionate about making these systems come together. So I feel truly lucky to call these gentlemen panelists, but also friends and thought leaders in the space. So thank you guys both for being here today.
Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. So just a quick, for those of you that are new to Mesh Systems, I miss my transitions, which is just part of the show business. But as far as just getting a chance to better know Mesh, we're a pioneer here in the IoT space. We've been in the connected product space for nearly 20 years, really focused on end-to-end, not only just business outcomes, but also product outcomes. We focused on building our solutions and expertise on the backs of the hyperscalers, not only just on the cloud side, but also on the hardware side, and making sure that that ecosystem comes together. We really focus on enterprise but have an expertise in kind of that global connected product space. There are needs that need to be taken into consideration when you look globally, and Mesh has been on the wall to make sure that happens. Being in a cutting edge space, you can imagine that R&D investment into not only just the platforms that we build things on, both on the hardware and cloud side, but also investments in our team and the services that we provide for our services or for our clients. And then I know we're really proud, I think, depending on the day, but the Meshmate culture really comes from this collaboration and winning. We've not only done that through some of the nominations of just best places to work here in the state, our Mesh Gives Back community, and also being recognized by a few of these awards, and Kraft obviously helped us land a few of these inventions, but especially for the time like Best Inventions of 2023, the Remix was on it, as well as a product we worked with in the cement monitoring space. So we're proud of the work we've done. We've built these really into a brand suite that helps allow us to have a starting point for all the projects and innovations we have around the cloud, managing devices at scale, getting stuff up and started. And I've often heard that, in my career, if you ever have a company spokesperson, it's important to kind of tout them throughout a consistent webinar content. That's at least what our marketing team says. So why are we here today? Connected products are a business revolution, not just a technology revolution. Oftentimes it's very easy to lead with the engineering and the technology. But getting started is where the magic often happens. And this was a quote we pulled from a fireside chat with Ron Burgundy. He was busy from the roast of Tom Brady and was able to fill in some content. So a little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, please drop the Q&A as we go. We'll flip flop between slides and content here, but want to make sure this is a good conversation with the three of us and showcase Alan and Richard's expertise. So on to the real show. Mesh, one of the things that we focused on over our time is having a hypothesis and a thought on just what this connected product journey can look like. So much of our business is spent on scale and getting things up off the ground. And so how do you really pull that together? And how do you take customers like Kraft or others on this journey, and what can this look like? And so at Mesh, and really today for today's conversation, we're going to focus a lot on kind of this testable prototype, or this left side of the vision. Obviously, Kraft has big aspirations and focus for Remix and the other innovation project they're doing across the space, but really want to focus today's connected product journey on the left side and launch and getting things up and running. So I'm actually going to come off screen share just to give Alan some access here to kick things off. So Alan, I'll give it back over to you.
Perfect. I appreciate it. What a great setup to get into this conversation. So Dan, very much appreciate it. And Richard, excited we can have this conversation. And I want to start off just a bit before we get into the connected ecosystem conversation and talking about Remix, to talk a bit about the overall Kraft Heinz innovation approach, our strategy, and a bit of our transformation we've been going through. So for those folks who have worked with me or on my team, I'm sure no one will be surprised that I want to start off with the ambition, right? I think you can't have a conversation, you can't have a transformation or a strategy that doesn't have a clear North Star and ambition. It's got to be bold, or it does make a few people a little bit uncomfortable, right? We're probably not going bold enough. And as we set off on this transformation, right, we said we were going to be the world's most innovative food company. And saying that on a conversation here, as I look at our list of attendees, many of them are working at other food companies, right? And we said this, and what we meant was not simply the financial goals. We want to drive through innovation, driving incremental net sales across the globe. But we also wanted to make sure that it was really living across every aspect of who we were. We wanted to make sure we were a company that was also being viewed from an external perspective as truly being the most innovative, right? We wanted to make sure it wasn't just our own benchmarks we were surpassing, but it was the benchmarks of the industry as well. And as we saw some of those awards that Dan put up there with, two of our innovations over the last year on Time Magazine's top inventions, we're being named now for the second year in a row, Fast Company on their most innovative companies list. That's a really helpful step on our journey. We know we have a long way to go, but it's helpful to know at least we're on the right track there. We also wanted to make sure that we were a company that great innovators wanted to work at, and incredibly innovative partners wanted to partner with, right? And that was another aspect. You're a great innovator, you're a great innovative company when you're a destination for innovation. And that was another aspect we wanted to make sure we always held up and held ourselves accountable to. And the fact that we can have this conversation with one of our incredible partners, right, certainly speaks to some of that evolution as well. But I think as you move beyond the ambition alone, what underpins so much of what we're doing here at Kraft Heinz, and it's our approach of agile at scale. We want to make sure that we can leverage the incredible scale we have across so many companies, so many countries, incredible iconic brands that mean so much to consumers and are in the homes of just about everyone. But really bring the agile methods to it, make sure that we can create empowered teams that can really drive game-changing innovation, break down the silos, get out of the linear approach. And I love that I can follow that great image that Dan put up on the screen, because that is what we need to be doing, moving with speed from insight to work in the world, and ensuring that we have teams that are empowered to go after big, audacious goals. Having that agile model is critical, but as we think about those agile teams can't only be the folks over at Kraft Heinz, right? That has to be the combination of our internal and external ecosystem coming together, right? That is partnerships that are really underpinned by mutuality, making sure that we can all win together and make sure that we're driving that change that can't exist within one company alone. I think this idea of a company being limited only by the capabilities that exist in their four walls, it's a very antiquated way of looking at capabilities and building and really creating transformation. And what's exciting, right, is that it's not simply, two companies that come together with partnerships, right? But it's multiple ecosystems coming together and creating that network effect. And that's been a huge part of our transformation journey as well. And then as we get into, so what are we innovating? How do we get there, right? There's two critical aspects that I think really come through. One is ensuring really strong consumer and customer centricity. We'll talk a lot more about that as we get into the Remix journey, but as a company, we are consumer obsessed. It is one of our values, and those aren't just words on a wall, right? It's how we make decisions and it's how we guide our choices. And of course, the customer, whether it is our retailer, whether it's a restaurant operator, ensuring that we have their needs as well. If we're only meeting the needs of one of those two, right, we're probably not going to be able to deliver the type of overall change we're looking for. Having the consumer and the customer at the forefront of every single decision is absolutely critical. And the last piece, and this really focuses in on where our disruptive team is creating growth, is driving change. We're seeing a lot of that work out in the world is focusing on scalable, ownable tech platforms. We want to sit right at that intersection of food and technology. We want to create the impossible. And whether it's the work on Remix that we'll be talking more about here, our 360 crisp platform that's out there in the world and changing the way food from a microwave can be experienced. These are a couple examples of how our innovation approach is truly coming to life and why you're seeing some exciting things coming from Kraft Heinz now, and there's a whole lot more coming. But with that, I'll toss it back over to Dan, and we'll get to the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I know there's probably quite a few questions. I know, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. It always makes my job a little easier, but feel free to use the live Q&A. Alan, awesome to get the context. I know how you guys see it as a business informs the decisions you start to make at the product level, and we've obviously been able to benefit from that, and so are those that are using the other platforms. So yeah, and we're working on a little bit of a transition here. Richard, I'm going to give you back some control of the slides here. So just give me 1 second, everybody. Bear with us. All right, Richard, you should be ready to drive, my friend.
Okay, great. Dan, thanks for the introduction, and Alan, that's just fantastic context. I'm so appreciative of the opportunity and the learning that I've gotten in working with you and your organization. I'm glad that you've enabled us to share some of this with the greater community in this notion of paying forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where we started and where we ended up, and I want to, this is a webinar about innovation as a secret sauce, but it is a webinar, and we promised, some educational content here. So, we do intend on sharing, some of the, letting you in on some of the innovation secrets here. I'm going to get to what we consider to be the recipe for innovation in a second, but I just want to share some perspectives on the journey with Alan and his team. So Alan alluded to the network effect, and that when you begin to work with one another, you immediately benefit from each respective partner bringing their own ecosystems. And we certainly brought that, and Kraft Heinz certainly brought that. Alan gathered us in a room, and frankly, we didn't really know what we were getting into, but I can tell you, when we left that room after a pretty long day, the vision was crystal clear. And I think one of the things that is paramount to success on an innovation of this type and scale and breadth is that clarity of vision. And Alan alluded to the North Star of everything is done from the customer perspective. In this case, both an end user of a machine that wants to get a special sauce, but also the people that operate these machines in their restaurants. And so that was really the framework that I think led to kicking it off in the right way, with that absolute crystal clear vision, along with a list of sort of the non-negotiables and, the gotta haves. And Alan had a pretty short list of those. But one of the things, which was good, but one of the things that was not a negotiable was a definitive timeline for completion. And having a completion date that's carved in stone is a wonderful motivator. And in this case, it was a significant major trade show that Kraft Heinz has participated in for years, and had these plans, and that show date was not going to move whether or not we were done or not. So, but I appreciated that also. And there's we knew when we were going to get done because the date of the show was fixed. And so it was a matter of accomplishing that vision and getting those must-haves pulled together in the time frame, which incidentally was about 6 months. One of my favorite movies is Apollo 13, and the team at NASA, had a very short, finite amount of time to really innovate. And in this case, it was, bringing the crew back alive, and failure was not an option. And well, I'm certainly not going to elevate, our collaborative work together with saving lives, but we did very much as a team adopt the failure is not an option mantra. I give a lot of credit to the Alan and the Kraft Heinz team for really taking, inventory of the stuff that they're incredibly good at, and recognizing that there are areas where they needed help. And I mean, this gets to talks to Alan's point about, an ecosystem of both internal and external partners. But I would say that in the areas where they felt they needed help, they really gave us and the other partners a lot of autonomy, empowered autonomy in making the right decisions, and basically not second guessing, the opinions of the experts. I just want to talk a little bit about, some of the competencies, and this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the competencies that needed to be, brought together by the team working on this project. And, food safety, first and foremost, formulation science, restaurant operations, customer demographics and taste trends. I don't know if there's a technical word for this scientific discipline, but I call it how to make stuff taste really good. That's clearly a core competency that was needed. We are building a machine, a connected machine. So IoT, systems engineering, fluidics, how do you move fluids around? How do you mix them together properly? How do you create an engaging, user experience? Again, this is very front-facing. The face of Kraft Heinz, if you look at the keystone, is on this, and you need to engage your customers in a manner that is consistent with with the brand image. And so, lot of input on user experience and industrial design. What should it look like? How big should it be? Does it sit on a counter? Inside the machine, there's a lot of electronics and mechanical engineering, hardware, software, cloud software, embedded software, mobile application software, business analytics back on the back end of this. One of the things that I can say about the remix is that from the onset, almost like Tesla describes their cars, the connectivity is a fundamental part of the machine, and it really is not a machine without that cloud and connectivity and configurability and recipe management behind it. Connectivity and communications. From a project execution standpoint, I think the team operated in a typical modern agile environment. Sprint planning, daily stand-ups, 2-week sprints. The team had a number of project managers, but one of the things that we've found as a ingredient of success is what we call a technical principal, and effectively it is the program's CTO or the project's CTO, and that individual on this program really had to understand a confluence of different technologies and domains and the realities of schedule and budget, and exceptionally important to have that cross-functional team participation, but maybe a single individual with overall sort of technical responsibility. The teams included dedicated spike teams to solve particularly vexing problems and technical challenges as we poured through the project in both the electronics domain and the electromechanical and fluidics domains. Very rich software, again, because we were on a very tight time frame, very rich software development environment, tool chains, simulators, test benches, we call them mules, to enable concurrent software and hardware development throughout the course of this.
Yeah, there's a lot that went into this, Richard, so it's good.
Yeah. So what I'd like to share here are what I consider to be the 7 essential ingredients of this innovation recipe. So I'm going to start with, and it's really how I began, my talk here, is the shared vision and clearly communicated. And this is squarely the credit goes to Alan and the Kraft Heinz team for really making it clear after a day or so together of what we needed to do, and clear statement of non-negotiables, and even transparency, frankly, about Kraft Heinz had obviously been thinking about this for a long time, and very transparent about where they had fallen short in previous looks at this, and that was so helpful to getting this off on the right track. I talked about, and Alan alluded to the fact that we're trying to address the needs of both the end users of the machine, and the owner operators who have these machines in their restaurants. And so the North Star for everything, all decisions, is what is best for the customer, and that's an essential ingredient. I want to talk about cultural integration, and culture is a term that is, I think, too casually used, but we did this incidentally right at the height of COVID, and this cultural integration, which I think we all recognize was immensely important to our mutual success, we felt was best handled by in-person meetings and bonding, and really getting to know one another, talk about the project, brainstorm, et cetera, but also have some fun together, break some bread together. And COVID notwithstanding, we were able to do that. And we certainly all love the flexibility of being able to work anywhere, but I'll tell you, the dynamic when you can get a lot of people with cross-functional perspectives, we use the term diversity. It's one of our welcome diversity in people and their ideas, and getting that cross-functional team together in a room, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different opinions, but integrated culturally was super important. Complementary strengths. I mean, obviously, a company the scale and stature of Kraft Heinz has, immense market access, brand strength, vast resources. And as I said earlier, and Alan alluded to it, the network effect of bringing our respective partner ecosystems to bear, but they had an incumbent set of partners that were immediately, brought in and integrated into this. And then in turn, we did as well. Catalyst Product Development, a company that we've worked with for years and years on the industrial and mechanical design. We brought them into the ecosystem, and that sort of combination of kind of a large company with vast resources and partner networks and market access with kind of the hyper agility of some smaller firms, I think was a great compliment here. We knew we were going to be innovating, and innovation ideally results in intellectual property. And I think one of the things also that I'm thankful for is a very clear statement about Kraft Heinz objectives and getting agreement for all the participants on the intellectual property framework that would foster innovation and yet meet everybody's needs and goals with respect to use of that intellectual property. And this is sometimes not thought about early, but I think it's that having that clarity at the onset was really important. Maybe the most important thing is the ability to quickly make decisions. When you're talking about a 6-month development program, decision making and quick decision making is paramount. And I think Alan used to say, or like to say that we developed the proper decision framework, and so the decisions were almost made themselves. And however, the decisions were made quickly and some risk taken, and we moved on. And then lastly, leadership support. It almost goes without saying, but resources and funding and prioritization and so forth. And I think all of the companies and people involved felt a great amount of support from their leadership. So I just want to talk about a little bit of remix by the numbers. So I think this is an approximate, and maybe not all full time, but 32 different people with input and competencies brought into this program, representing 16 technical disciplines and more non-technical disciplines. The machine itself delivers over 200 different combinations of sauce, and I think that's only limited by imagination. I think that number is set to move up here pretty soon. So, and I think this is really astounding that we went, from across this journey in 6 months, start to finish, from the first time we sat down and Alan and the team shared the vision to having a functioning unit, operating and delighting people at a trade show in 6 months. And then this is anecdotal, but I had heard that between somehow it going viral on TikTok and being on television and people that saw it, something like over 2 billion impressions, which is just a mind-blowing number. And with that, Dan, I'm gonna give it back to you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Richard. And I know, so much of the emphasis of this section too, I think as we look, is just being a part of the Kraft ecosystem, which we've obviously been grateful to be a part of. So yeah, it's cool to see some of the numbers, all that's gone into it. And obviously the support from Alan and team has made that possible. So I'm going to try something new on a webinar. I'm actually going to use a video to transition over to Alan here. But, one of the things that we put together with Catalyst, the product development company that helped us on this, was just a sort of a look back at the remix. And so I'm going to hope this works. And if not, I'll do the classic. We'll send it out to you in the follow-up. But hopefully this will work, just to kind of tell the story. And obviously there's some famous faces in this, but yeah, I wanted to just kind of get a little recap on the remix before I turn it back over to you, Alan, to cover more how it's impacting your business.
Great.
ever customizable sauce dispenser.
Kraft Heinz is changing the way consumers can get their dipping sauces. The Heinz Remix. The hype around this seems to be pretty real, and this ultimately took the team 6 months to build.
We actually get data from that machine that we put in food service in a way that allows us to understand what are consumers' favorite choices.
All right, awesome. So yeah, like I said, a little video to transition, but Alan, wanted to give the floor back to you, and from here, guys, we'll do a little Q&A. So please keep dropping those in. We had a bunch submitted pre-webinar, which helped populate. But yeah, Alan, I'll kick it over to you to cover a little more on Remix.
Perfect. So first, just want to echo everything that Richard just walked through. I think everyone here is looking at the output, but obviously the inputs, how we got there, that journey, those 7, key elements, those ingredients, they made up the recipe that really helped bring Remix to life. And I think like as I focused in on just a couple of those specifically as we look at Remix, right? I think really knowing what you're building for. I talked about that consumer and customer centricity. Richard mentioned it as well. That allowed us to understand and help define what was the end solution. I think when you're looking at only what problems, what challenges are in your way, those challenges can at times seem insurmountable. How do you make a trade-off? How do you prioritize? What solutions are acceptable? Which ones are not? And when you know the end goal and you have those non-negotiables of what must be true for us to be successful, I think that's critical. And I think it really helped enable us to move with that speed that Richard had talked about. In addition, and we talked so much about this on the journey, right? Really defining, what is the M of an MVP, right? A minimum viable product. It's fundamental to making sure we can bring this idea to consumers, to operators, really get that live feedback. And there were a lot of features that we'll say were nice to have, but they certainly weren't necessary. They didn't meet the criteria of minimal, right? In a minimum viable product. And as Richard mentioned, the decision criteria was critical, so that when we needed to make decisions, it was very clear what path we needed to go take. You take that, you bring in a partner ecosystem, you take the strengths and skills of so many different dynamic partners, each with deep functional expertise in key areas. That's what allowed us to really move forward in that way. Now, as we look at Remix holistically, as a program, as a key element of our innovation approach, there are a few key aspects. I think one is, yes, we want to drive an incredible consumer experience. We know that consumers are looking for more different variety, different ways to personalize their meals. And we know that sauces and taste elevation, which is so fundamental to our business, is a key way that consumers are looking to do that. We know that operators are looking to find more ways to drive variety in their menu and help give that delight to the consumers that are going into those restaurants or other aspects of away from home dining. And it's a pain point today, right? That's standing in the way of what that ideal solution is. And we saw the rate at which consumers were already creating their own sauces by mixing in their plates, in their dip cups. We saw the pace of acceleration and change of flavors coming. We knew that the answer, right, wasn't simply creating a new sauce, right? We needed to create all of the new sauces, right? And that's really what Remix helps unlock from a consumer perspective. But at the same time, we had to make sure we were doing something that was adding value to the operator as well. If what we're doing only delivers value for the consumer, but not to that restaurant operator or operator any other away from home channel, it's not going to be a solution that works. Finding ways to make sure there's efficiency from a cleaning and a loading perspective, that connection, that IoT aspect that is so fundamental to Remix, that needed to enable value. When am I running low on my sauces? How do I reorder? What is the connected operating model that Remix can enable, as opposed to being a challenge in a host of so many other challenges that can be on the plate of an operator? And as we solve for the consumer, we solve for the customer. That gave us our destination. But now if you look at all of the different aspects that the Heinz Remix brings to life, that's where things get even more exciting. And, as someone who focuses on innovation, these are things that get me really excited. I'm guessing if you signed up for this webinar, they get you pretty excited as well. But what the Heinz Remix offers is an insights engine, right? Every single location where consumers are eating away from home, there's a chance for us to understand what sauces are they looking for? What level of consumption are they having? What flavors and how are they personalizing it? How does that change by region? How does that change by host food type? How does that change by different types of away from home channels? That's incredibly powerful as we look to create a continuous flywheel of innovation going forward from away from home into all of our channels where innovation plays a key role. And what that leaves us with is a little mini R&D center, right? In every single one of these dining locations. Consumers are creating these flavors. They're seeing what works. They're seeing what doesn't work for their needs. And that allows us to be quick, to adapt, to create new updates, to bring new flavors in, and respond to the ever-evolving needs of consumers and customers. We're excited about the experience Remix brings, but even more so, we're excited about the entire innovation flywheel that Remix creates. So with that, it's a bit of additional fun news that just is from today. I feel like, who doesn't love breaking news on a webinar? I think the business transformation opportunity of Heinz Remix, we're talking about it. You see why we're so excited about it. But just as of this morning, shortlisted for two Cannes Lions, which is just another external view on the type of change we're bringing, just how different this is, and seeing the value it could bring to Kraft Heinz, to consumers, to operators, and the industry as a whole.
Well, it's super exciting and no surprise. I mean, I know, Remix has been a hit from the moment it hit the show floor at NRA last year, and obviously continues to gain momentum, not only just with the partners that are supporting it, but consumers, right? I think, Richard alluded to some of the media impressions, and yeah, it does get wrapped up into that. So yeah, thanks, Alan, for the context and how Remix fits in. Well, now's the fun part, I think. I'll toss some softballs out your guys' way, but want to really turn it over to the Q&A side, and please continue to submit Q&A. Like I said, we had quite a few come in before the webinar, so we'll chalk those in and kind of keep going. So Alan, you talked a little bit about innovation as an engine and how the flywheel comes into that, and how there's certain different phases of that flywheel that can be interdependent or work together. What do you see are like some of the key phases to the innovation journey, just as you look at it as Kraft Heinz?
Yeah, and I think this is where our agile innovation approach really comes through. Because yes, there's a lot of different phases. Those phases can either be treated as a linear approach, right? Or it can be treated as a continuously evolving and iterative approach. And I think that's fundamental. So yes, I'll mention those phases for sure. But I think not viewing them as simply a pure linear progression, but looking at it as a framework, right? Of so what are some of the critical aspects that need to be true? And I think as you start at that strategize phase, like knowing what you're solving for, knowing how you can create the right ecosystem to go solve, and having the right overall approach, jobs to be done. That's really where you always need to start. I think if you're creating an incredible innovation that doesn't solve a problem or doesn't deliver an opportunity to someone, like it could be wonderful and incredibly cool, but what is it in service of? And I think that strategize phase at the beginning is absolutely critical because it sets the foundation. As you build that empathy with your consumers, you have that empathize phase, bringing in some of the design thinking aspects that are so critical, right? Bringing that consumer and customer centricity from day one. That's where you really get into those consumer, customer, shopper insights that are so powerful to make sure what you're shaping is able to be meaningful in service of that problem you've identified in that or upfront strategy. As you go from there, right, this is where things get super iterative, right? You have these various different phases of your development, whether they're low fidelity, mid fidelity, high fidelity, minimum viable products, and making sure that at each stage you have your clear assumptions, you have your hypotheses that you want to go test, and you can understand, are we going the right direction? Are we building? Are we delivering the value that we really thought was so great? As you move from there, you're getting those insights, not just the claim behavior, the true do behavior from your consumers, your customers, and you can move and decide what is that path to scale. It'll look so different across every innovation. With Remix, we took a very intentional approach, right, of getting feedback first from our operators at the National Restaurant Show. Right from there, right, moving with a clear learning plan of how do we gain those learnings in markets and make sure that it's not simply the claim behavior, right? But what are consumers doing? How are they acting differently? How is this delivering value for those operators as well? And making sure that as we scale, we're doing it in the right, effective way. I started with Agile at Scale. I want to bring it over here as well. It's fundamental to the way that we work, and it's fundamental to the overall transformation in all of these phases.
No, that's super helpful. And I know, Richard, we've definitely been a big part of some of those shifts. But yeah, Alan, I think the context of how it fits into the different phases. But yeah, there's a lot to it. Richard, as you're looking at, the projects we've been involved with, and even just in your career, how much does like culture play a big role in innovation? I mean, as you think about pulling these different teams together and getting kind of common working patterns, how much do you think that similar culture or even different plays into some of the execution there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exceptionally important. I mean, does your company culture encourage, risk taking and experimentation, or even tolerate failure? Is it safe to fail? And, I think true innovation requires, some appetite for risk and some acceptance of failure. I mean, the other thing is, and again, back on the diversity theme, in that we find that when you bring diverse people and ideas to the table, you're never going to agree on everything, but the perspective that you get by broadening that aperture and getting the input from a wide swath of people with an opinion is super important. I think that's directly related to company culture. The other one, is empowerment and autonomy. I mean, do people feel empowered in their companies or their work environment to make, to work independently and to make decisions? And again, empowerment and autonomy, I think, are key ingredients of innovation, and they derive from company culture.
Yeah, perfect. And Alan, I know as a business as big as Craft is and the number of brands you have and business lines and things like that, what's the balance between, what we consider greenfield or like, new product launch versus the rethinking or kind of that brownfield? How do we reinvigorate maybe a brand or something? What's like the balance for you guys as you look at innovation?
Yeah, and the short answer is both are critical, right? And I think with a company like Kraft Heinz, right, that has such incredible brands, right, that are so meaningful in people's lives, making sure that on both, whether you are renovating or having an extension of a current product that exists in market today, or looking at true disruptive innovation that'll still come to life through the many of those brands. It's about understanding what makes those brands and products so powerful, so meaningful in the lives of consumers. How do you keep that relevance that is so critical, but build on it, right? As you bring these new innovations forward. That's true in a brand renovation. It's true in a flavor extension or even a category expansion. But it's also true with disruptive innovation, right? We want to make sure that as we bring those new innovations to bear, you don't lose any of that consumer centricity to make sure that you still have that relevance of why that brand matters, and you amplify it through those innovations. So the balance is critical, but they're both absolutely essential to our innovation approach.
Yeah, it makes sense. Richard, I know, in our world or just in the world of mesh, companies, we find like have to place their strategic bets on innovation. And in your mind, are there different ways to evaluate a connected product initiative for something legacy versus new product? Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a mistake for companies when they're thinking about innovation to ignore their legacy products. I think that a lot of initiatives, connected product initiatives, start with a grand vision and this perfect world where every asset is natively digital. And the reality is that we live in a world with baggage, legacy products, things that aren't maybe connectable or whatever. And I would say, whatever your grand vision is for this new product, connected product, it's probably incomplete or maybe even wrong. And leverage your legacy business. Don't ignore that. And I think so there are differences. I guess the key takeaway would be don't ignore what you built your business on.
For sure. Yeah, it's if something's already there, it's easy to kind of keep going. Alan, one of the things we kind of talk about is like Alanisms or things to keep in mind. But one of the things you talk about is pursue progress over perfection. You've talked a lot about that in your space. So how do you, as an innovation leader, balance the sort of right calculated risks while also pursuing concepts with the inherent risk of failure? And I would say maybe as an organization, and then the following question would be, how do you do that and kind of empower your team to feel comfortable making some of those calculated risks within sort of the confines of the greater strategy?
Well, it's not easy. Let's start there. But it really is critical. Innovation is hard, right? And acknowledging that not every innovation is going to be a success is such an important part of that mindset. We're focused on driving action, want to move at the pace of culture, right? Move with speed from insight to work in the world. And that means not everything's going to be perfect from day one. We know our first MVP of Remix was never going to have every single thing, right? But it was a tremendous leap forward on progress. So we can get that feedback to go build what's going to be coming afterwards. And I think to build a culture of that, right, you need to start from really understanding, again, what are your assumptions? What are you solving for? I think failing fast is really easy to say. Failing fast is everyone celebrates it when it's someone else's failure, right? Celebrating your own failures is hard, right? It takes a certain level of confidence and knowledge that you will be supported for taking those risks. And from there, you can say it, right, as much as you'd like, right? But the reality is you have to live it. You have to show and identify those spaces and say, listen, this is what happens. And here's what we're going to go do with it. Here's the learning, as opposed to saying, how do we get here, pointing fingers and trying to associate blame with a failure like that. It doesn't lead to a culture of innovation. But when you focus on what are the learnings of those assumptions, did we gain them? Did we not gain them? Did we gain the learnings to say this assumption now requires a pivot or even to move off the innovation platform as a whole? That is something worth celebrating, right? And I think when you bring that to life, it puts you in a position to really focus on that progress, knowing that perfection is both elusive, but takes a lot of time, right? And you got to make sure that you're constantly moving in the right direction. Have your North Star, and the direction of travel is critical.
So yeah, that's helpful. And I think how it fits in the team dynamic is always, it's evolving. And I think that strategy up front really helps. Alan, you talked a little about the platform side of things. And I'd be curious, Richard, IoT has a lot of nebulous or terms that can be sometimes hard to define, and even depending on the right ecosystems mean something in other places. So, but two of the common words that we often hear and we talk a lot about are product and platform. So in your mind, like what's the difference and how do you shape the sort of the measurability of that innovation, or how do you think about that from a planning and measurement standpoint?
And I think platform is one of the most overused and misunderstood terms in our industry. I'd like it to go away. I mean, platforms don't deliver business outcomes, right? I mean, they're important. They're a tool, but that platform should drive that business outcome with more certainty or less expensively or more quickly. I would like to use the word platform a lot less, I guess, in all of our discussions. I'm looking at your background there. There's no platform in that mission statement there, Dan.
Yeah, that's fair. No, and I think one thing, Alan, a lot of times we talk about, hey, products need to drive value, right? Whether it's something you do on the IoT enablement side, a new sauce you may combine. Where does Kraft start with finding that value? Is it really consumer driven? Is it business driven? Is it economics driven? I'm sure it's a combination of both, but where have you tended to focus as you've looked at, just the evolution of your business from an innovation standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, I think for an innovation to be successful, and going sort of with the design thinking approach, right, you really need to ensure you have that desirability, viability, and feasibility all coming together in a way that create something that can be sustainable, that can drive value, but it's in service of something that's meaningful. And that's why I think if you don't start with the consumer and customer problems to be solved, right, you could very much end up with a business case that's in service of nothing, right? You could end up with something that is technically feasible, but it's simply technology, right? That is not going to deliver that value. So I think if you start from what are the insights, what are the trends, where are our consumers and customers moving, that allows us to have a really robust starting point. From there, right, making sure that we always have that right combination of what is the business case and viability, what is the tech that's needed, what is the feasibility of manufacturing solutions, procurement, and all of those to bring it to life. But it's got to be in service of something meaningful, right? And that's where that consumer centricity is absolutely paramount.
No, that's perfect. Well, and I guess this question for both of you, as you guys have been on innovation journeys, and I'll start with Richard for you, just what advice do you have for companies that are evaluating sort of the internal capabilities as well as just outside partnership? How do you, and I'm going to come back to you on this, so be thinking I put Richard on the spot first, but how do you think about sort of the outside partnership ecosystem within an innovative project like this, or something that we might do every day?
Well, I think it starts with being, honest with your assessment of what you can do internally or what you should do internally. And a lot of companies have a culture of, it's all in our four walls, and that's fine. And some have the capabilities and the breadth to do that. I think for a lot of us, and one of the reasons why we exist is that a lot of forward-thinking companies look to outsiders that specialize in a particular expertise like IoT or whatever. And I don't know that there's I don't know that there's a better way. I think certainly we've seen examples in products that we interact with every day where things are done primarily, inside the four walls of a major corporation. And we've seen other things, and Remix, I think, is a good example where, sort of a coalition of technology and subject matter experts across a broad swath of disciplines come together and create something great.
Yeah,
So.
that's helpful. Thanks. And Alan, how about for you? I mean, how do you assess what you have in-house versus where you need the support?
I mean, at the risk of agreeing too much with Richard, I think there is no one single answer to it, right? I think from our perspective, right, at Kraft Heinz, right, we have really big ambitions of what we're going for, right? And trying to find the right collection of talent capabilities is going to be easy to get there. No one organization is the best at everything, right? Everyone's great at something, right? A set of skills that they've built their business on, a set of assets and people and overall benefits they can build from. But the truth is, when you have the right combination and the right partners that come together, and that's not just individual partners, but full ecosystems that come together. I don't want to just make 1 + 1 = 2. I don't want to make 1 + 1 = 3. Like, I want to make 1 + 1 = 7.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that can really come when you create those network effects of partners. So we look at how do we get to great, right? And generally, there's some amazing things going on outside of our four walls. And for me, that's all just part of the ecosystem if you choose to make it.
Makes sense. Awesome. Well, I know we have a couple minutes, and thanks for the Q&A feature on Zoom is currently stuck in a spinning wheel of fun. So apologies for anyone that I didn't get to questions on. I'm gonna kind of work to just start to wrap this up. We will share the recording as just some housekeeping here. So, but as we look at rounding out things today, I mean, hopefully you've our three key takeaways when Alan, Richard, and I were collaborating on just putting the content together is continuous innovation is definitely requires strategic focus, right? Of what's the mission and commitment. You can't kind of half-ass this a little bit, right? You need to focus on kind of going all in and making sure the strategy is there to align. Disruption is obviously a big part of just the leadership and culture. I know Alan talked a lot about that of just, though it started maybe from the top down, getting your culture and your team rallied around it is really what's helped that. And then both companies, I know Richard and Alan have preached the ability of agile and agility and progress, obviously not just perfection that matter when you're trying to do something new and innovative. So appreciate you guys, taking the time just as kind of a quick Mesh will have our kind of final connected product journey series for the year with one of our partners from C-Comp on the creating the right hardware and software ecosystem to win. IoT is definitely a team sport. You felt that here from both these gentlemen, and this is one of our partners that we work with quite a bit. So looking forward to that here this fall. So, Alan, Richard, like, thank you both. I mean, for the fact that you guys took some time here to chat with me virtually. Wish we were together, sharing a Diet Coke and a beer, but this will have to do for now. And yeah, looking forward to more collaboration between these companies and a strong future for both ahead.
Thanks. Appreciate the partnership
thank you.
to everyone on Mesh and the entire Remix journey. And thanks for the great conversation.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Alan, thanks so much. Great seeing you all. Thanks,
Thanks,
Dan.
guys.
See y'all.
Have a great day.